So where exactly do Amtrak trains go in the United States? Hi, I'm still Jeremy, and in this video we'll take an in-depth look at where Amtrak trains can take you and how you can use Amtrak and its connecting services to get around America. Here's a map of everywhere Amtrak train lines go. The red lines are the routes, but to understand exactly how these routes all fit together, or don't, we need to look closer. First off, as you can see, Amtrak stretches coast to coast and goes down to the deep south, up across the far north, and even into Canada, where you can connect with Canadian trains. Amtrak reaches most regions of America, and only 2 of the contiguous 48 states, Wyoming and South Dakota, are not served at all by Amtrak. Actually, Wyoming sort of is, but we'll get to that later. To get around America and travel between the cities on this map, sometimes it's a single ride on one train, and sometimes it isn't. Most importantly, there's no coast-to-coast service. So if you want to travel from, say, New York to Los Angeles, you'll have to transfer. Most transfers between the east and the west part of the country are done in Chicago, which is a major Amtrak hub. You can also transfer in New Orleans. Let's look at how all these routes fit together. On this map, the cities with black names are starting and ending stations on Amtrak routes, or connecting stations where you can transfer or where trains split. Blue cities are other notable stops along the way. So, for example, there's a route called Silver Service/Palmetto. This is actually 3 different but similar routes with different names, all beginning, or ending, in New York City. If traveling from New York, the Silver Meteor goes down through Virginia to Selma, North Carolina, where it stays closer to the coast to hit other stops like Charleston. Not all the stops are shown on this map, by the way, but we'll go over where to find comprehensive maps online in a little bit. The Silver Meteor continues down to Savannah, then Orlando, and finally Miami. The Silver Star starts in New York and follows the same route to Selma, but there it turns inland to go through Raleigh and then south at Cary to go through Columbia, South Carolina. The Silver Star rejoins the Silver Meteor in Savannah and goes down to Orlando, but then makes a round trip to Tampa before continuing down to Miami. And then the Palmetto follows the same route as Silver Meteor through Charleston, but only goes as far as Savannah. So, depending on exactly where you want to go and what you want to see along the way, there are sometimes options like these. Just to explore this example a little bit further, other routes along the way offer yet more options. So if you want to go from New York to Newport News, Virginia, and I think that sounds like fun, you'd take a Northeast Regional train all the way. Or if you wanted to, you could take one of the Silver Service Palmetto trains as far as Richmond and then change to a Northeast Regional train. If you wanted to go from New York to Charlotte, North Carolina, you could take the Crescent, which goes there directly, or the Carolinian, which also goes there directly but follows a slightly different route to the east. The best way to figure out exactly how to get from place to place on Amtrak is to let them decide. When you buy tickets on the Amtrak website, you just put in your starting and ending points and it will give you whatever options there are. Often there aren't really as many options as you'd think, assuming you want as few transfers as possible. For example, despite all the Amtrak lines in the Northeast, there's only 1 direct route between Boston and Chicago, and only 2 between New York and Chicago. Speaking of the Northeast, this is arguably the best served area of the United States. Compared to the other parts of the country, quite a few shorter and more specialized routes exist here. So you can take the Keystone service between New York and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, or the Pennsylvanian between New York and Pittsburgh. The Downeaster goes between Boston and Brunswick, Maine. From New York, the Adirondack and Maple Leaf take you to Montreal and Toronto, respectively. So if you're traveling around the Northeast on Amtrak, you're fairly well covered. But let's zoom out. What if you wanted to go from Washington, D.C. to, say, Denver? In this case, you'll need 2 trains, either the Cardinal or the Capital Limited to Chicago, and then the California Zephyr to Denver. Again, remember that no trains go between the east and west halves of the U.S. You have to change in Chicago. The only other option would be New Orleans, where the Crescent ends and where you can change to the Sunset Limited towards Los Angeles or the city of New Orleans to Chicago, or vice versa if you're traveling east. Now, while there are a lot of major and some not so major cities on this map, and thus ways to travel between them on Amtrak, there are obviously some gaps. We already saw how Amtrak doesn't even enter Wyoming or South Dakota at all, and other states like New Hampshire, Tennessee, and Delaware just barely. And what about major destinations that Amtrak does go, like Atlanta? Only 1 route passes through Atlanta, the Crescent. That means there's no easy way to get between Atlanta and Chicago, or Florida, or Nashville. New Orleans and Washington, D.C., those are pretty much your only options from Atlanta. In fact, Amtrak doesn't go anywhere near Nashville. Nor does it go to Phoenix, or Las Vegas, or Boise, or Twin Falls, or Augusta, Maine, and on and on. Well, the good news is that Amtrak partners with various transportation services, usually buses, around the country to provide access to many more destinations. This map, which is on the Amtrak website, and I'll link to it in the description, shows these connecting routes in green. Amtrak calls them thruway services. This is how you can fill in a lot of the gaps in Amtrak's main train routes, and get to Las Vegas, or to Phoenix, or Montgomery, Alabama, or Sarasota, or Nashville, or way up through Wisconsin and Michigan. This is how you explore more of Oregon, and Colorado, and Kentucky, and Ohio. And yes, how you can use Amtrak to move around the great state of Wyoming. And this is why South Dakota is feeling especially left out. Not even Amtrak's thruway connecting services go there. Sorry guys. Keep in mind though that there are other buses like Greyhound that can take you pretty much anywhere if you're the type of traveler who doesn't mind branching out a little bit. But back to Amtrak's trains. As we've seen, there are many options to not only use Amtrak for transportation, but to have fun doing it. A lot of the attraction of traveling by Amtrak is the gentle sort of excitement of it, especially on overnight trains, such as the famous multi-day routes in the West. Virtually all Amtrak trains have food, something I've covered in detail in another video that I'll link to in the description. And all, of course, have seats to relax in while you watch the landscape and the towns roll steadily by. The best way to figure out how to get around is to check over the maps and then see what Amtrak calculates as the best routes for you. There are some great resources online for you to look at Amtrak maps and do some planning. First of all, Amtrak has this great map in PDF form on their website. It's the one that the maps in this video are based on, but it has every single station on it, as well as the thruway services. I'll link to the URL in the description. Also on Amtrak's website is an interactive map that you can zoom in and out of. This map doesn't show the thruway services, unfortunately, at least as of the time I'm making this video. There is a cool feature on the Amtrak website called Track Your Train, which shows nearly real-time information about currently running trains. For example, here's a train on the Texas Eagle route. Right now it's going from San Antonio to Chicago. The next station will be Walnut Ridge, Arkansas, where it will arrive at 2:10 a.m. Central Time, which is 29 minutes late. And you can click, it's going 75 miles an hour and heading northeast. And you can click here and get all sorts of detailed information about each stop. It's a handy tool and also something you can watch just for fun if you want to be an online train spotter. Finally, you can visualize Amtrak routes on Google Maps if you like that interface. So let's see, from Seattle, Washington to Minneapolis, Minnesota. There's driving directions. Click the train. There you go. Empire Builder, the blue line. Let's see if it'll connect train lines. Let's see, Seattle to let's do New York City. Okay. Yeah, there it is. Empire Builder and Lakeshore Limited, with a change in Chicago. That's the easiest way. Anyway, I'll link to all these maps and tools in the description. One minor note, the thruway bus services are reflected in the ticket buying section on Amtrak's website, but your trip has to include train travel. So going from Stockton, California to Las Vegas, Nevada, which is a train to Bakersfield and then a bus, is possible. But only the bus part, Bakersfield to Las Vegas, doesn't work. And finally, if you have any general questions about anything related to Amtrak, it's probably answered in my Amtrak Questions and Answers video. Check the description for that. Thanks for watching. Check out my other videos for travel tips, stories from my own travels, and my experiences as a Type 1 diabetic wanderer. See you on the rails!